Most people think their life is shaped by effort, luck, timing, or circumstance. But what if the real cause has been hidden in plain sight, sitting quietly inside every sentence they speak and every belief they hold? What if the single phrase that has been shaping their money, relationships, confidence, and destiny is one they say every day without noticing? Here's the paradox. You don't manifest what you want. You manifest who you are. And who you are is revealed every time you say two words: I am. Those two words act like a command to reality, an instruction your world is obligated to follow. Neville Goddard said that I am is the name of the creative power within you, and once you understand it, everything changes. The pressure, the chase, the fear of the unknown. Suddenly, life stops feeling random. It becomes responsive. Because your identity isn't a description of your life. It's the blueprint that creates it. And if that's true, and it is, then the question becomes impossible to ignore. What reality have your I ams been commanding without your awareness? Today, you're about to understand the real power behind this phrase, not the motivational version, the metaphysical version. The version that explains why the world seems to know who you secretly believe yourself to be, and why it keeps reflecting that back to you with precision. If you've ever felt stuck, unseen, unlucky, or endlessly repeating the same patterns, this may be the missing piece. Because once you learn how identity shapes reality, you gain something most people never realize they have: the ability to choose who you are, before the world reflects it. And that's where everything begins to change. Every time someone whispers, I am, a quiet blueprint is drawn beneath their feet. Most people don't notice it because it happens subtly, like a soft echo that keeps returning until they realize it has shaped their entire world. A mentor once said that reality isn't built from effort, but from identity, and he was right. The power of I am, Neville Goddard described, isn't poetic, it's structural. It determines how life responds before a single action is taken. Think of a person who grew up hearing, "You're the responsible one," or "You're always the problem." Without meaning to, they lived according to that script for years. Identity creates reality, Neville taught, not because the universe is judging, but because the mind cannot help but express what it believes itself to be. The law of assumption moves through them unconsciously, shaping everything from money to relationships. They don't choose outcomes, only the self that produces them. Someone might decide to work harder, study more, hustle non-stop, yet still feel blocked. It's not ability, it's identity friction. If deep down they carry I am limited, no strategy can override it. They are trying to build a mansion on a blueprint designed for a shed. This is why the imagination creates reality more consistently than action alone. The internal blueprint always wins. People rarely notice how often they declare who they are. I am stressed. I am confused. I am always the one giving more. Statements tossed out casually, but each one reinforcing a version of self that 3D must mirror. The wish-fulfilled Neville method isn't just about imagining a scene. It's about imagining yourself differently within it. When identity shifts, the scene shifts too. There's a moment when someone wakes up and realizes they've been living as a character they never consciously wrote. It can feel shocking, almost uncomfortable, like meeting themselves for the first time. But this moment is powerful. It opens the door to the law of assumption identity shift, the recognition that identity has never been fixed. It was adopted, absorbed, inherited, and anything adopted can be replaced. Imagine a person who has carried the belief, I am unlucky, for decades. That single I am acts like a magnet for confirming experiences. Not because life wants to punish them, but because the subconscious keeps organizing reality to match the signal. Feeling it real, Neville Goddard emphasized, means stepping out of that identity long enough to sense what else is possible. A new identity is like new soil. You plant different seeds. Even money responds to identity. One person believes, I am worthy of more, and opportunities flow almost naturally. Another believes, I am always starting over, and life rearranges to prove them right. Creation is finished, explained. Neville style means every version of self already exists. Reality is simply selecting which one you're inhabiting. The world doesn't ask what you want, it asks who you are. Picture someone walking into a room with quiet confidence, not arrogance but inner clarity. People treat them differently without knowing why. Identity radiates before words are spoken. Live in the end is not about pretending. It's about embodying this version of self so deeply that even strangers feel it. The blueprint updates, and the world adjusts. Sometimes a person notices they're outgrowing their old identity. Things that once triggered them no longer do. Patterns that felt inevitable start dissolving. Feeling is the secret, Neville Goddard insisted, because the emotional tone reveals which identity is active. Relief means the shift is taking hold. Resistance means the old blueprint is fighting for survival. And slowly, they begin to see that every I am has been a quiet instruction to the universe. Not a prayer, not a wish, a command. The moment they understand this, something inside settles. Because if identity shapes everything, then changing identity changes everything. Neville often reminded people that I am is not just a phrase. It is the very spark of creation speaking through them. When someone says those two words, they aren't describing themselves. They're activating the creative force that shapes the next moment. The power of I am Neville Goddard revealed is the same force ancient texts called divine. It isn't outside, distant, or unreachable. It's woven into every breath of identity. Most people don't realize they're using this power all day long. They say, I am overwhelmed, and the mind accepts it as a command. They whisper, I am not enough, and reality rearranges to mirror it. The law of assumption reflects this deeply. Because identity creates reality, Neville demonstrated in every lecture. The universe takes the shape of the words that follow I am, like clay responding to the hands that mold it. Imagine someone standing in front of a mirror, not just seeing their reflection, but feeling their entire identity speaking back to them. If they say I am confident, something shifts internally before anything happens externally. That's the imagination creates reality at work, not visualizing an outcome, but assuming a self. Neville would say, this is how creation is finished, explained. Every state exists, and I am chooses the one you occupy. Think of I am as the steering wheel of life. Every direction depends on how it's turned. Someone who constantly says I am anxious doesn't realize they're steering deeper into that feeling. But the reverse is also true. I am supported, even when whispered gently, begins a new trajectory. Feeling it real, Neville Goddard taught, is not theatrics. It's alignment between identity and experience. There's a story Neville loved. Moses asking for God's name and hearing, I am that I am. Not a title, not a description, an identity. Neville interpreted this as the law of assumption identity shift in its purest form. Whatever a person declares after I am becomes the state they animate with consciousness. They're not begging reality to change, they're authorizing it. Consider the moment someone tries on a new identity for the first time. It feels awkward, like wearing clothes that don't fit yet. But the more they affirm, I am deserving, I am chosen, I am capable, the more natural it becomes. This is the wish-fulfilled Neville method beginning to form. They aren't pretending, They're remembering a version of themselves that already exists in consciousness. Every identity has a vibration, a mood, a posture. When someone says, "I am peaceful," the body responds before the world does. The heart slows, the shoulders relax, the breath deepens. Feeling is the secret, Neville explained, because feeling proves to the subconscious that the new identity is real. Words alone don't shift reality, feeling does. Picture someone walking through a difficult season. Bills piling, relationships strained, opportunities delayed. If they say, "I am defeated," life collapses inward. But if they dare to declare, "I am overcoming," the atmosphere changes, not magically but energetically. The subconscious hears a new command and the world begins to reflect it, piece by piece. That's identity creates reality. Neville in action. Every transformation begins with those two words. They are the doorway between who someone was and who they allow themselves to be. They carry the authority of creation, the simplicity of truth, and the responsibility of awareness. And once someone understands that "I am" is the name of the creative force within, they begin paying attention to what follows it. Most people speak their identity into existence without even noticing. They say, "I am tired, I am unlucky, I am always struggling," as casually as breathing. Yet each of those declarations feeds the subconscious a steady diet of limitation. The power of "I am Neville Goddard" emphasized works whether someone is conscious of it or not. Identity creates reality, Neville taught, quietly, consistently, impersonally. Someone might think they're merely describing how they feel, but they're actually instructing the law of assumption. "I am exhausted" doesn't just label a moment. It becomes a state the imagination creates reality around. The subconscious isn't logical, it's obedient. Whatever follows, "I am," becomes the blueprint it works from, even if the person didn't mean to plant that seed. Think of those phrases passed down in families: "We're just not lucky people," or "In this house we always struggle for everything." These statements sound harmless, almost cultural. But they shape identity like wet concrete, hardening into a familiar mold. Feeling it real, Neville Goddard taught, becomes difficult when someone's "I am" is rooted in inherited limitation. Imagine someone waking up, looking at the day ahead, and the first thing they say is, "I am already overwhelmed." Before they check a single email, before a single challenge appears, they've created the emotional tone for the entire day. "Creation is finished," explained, means the state existed before the events unfolded. The "I am" simply chose which one to align with. A person might go through a breakup and declare, "I am unlovable." They may fail a project and say, "I am a mess." These "I ams" don't just describe circumstances, they define identity. And once identity is defined, the law of assumption identity shift moves in unconsciously, shaping experiences to match that unwanted declaration. Life becomes a loop born from careless words. Even humor can mask unconscious identity. Someone jokes, "I am cursed with bad luck," but the subconscious doesn't laugh. It accepts the statement as truth. Feeling is the secret, and even a playful tone doesn't override the emotional imprint behind those words. They become tiny commands sent into reality, each one gathering evidence to prove itself right. Consider how often people use "I am" to reinforce powerlessness. "I am stuck," "I am confused," "I am the problem." These phrases feel true in the moment, but they build a long-term identity that shapes patterns, relationships, and finances. The imagination creates reality, but the imagination is trained by repetition, and repetition becomes identity. It's like someone walking around with a self-imposed label taped to their chest. Others respond to the label, even if they never know it's there. If the label says "I am overlooked," people unconsciously behave in ways that confirm it. If the label says I am always behind, opportunities seem to slip away. Identity creates reality, Neville explained, because identity determines interpretation. But the most dangerous part is how normal these declarations feel. They don't arrive with drama or fireworks. They sneak in quietly, disguised as harmless descriptions, but they condition the subconscious daily. And the subconscious doesn't differentiate between intention and habit. It only hears I am and follows orders. Once someone begins noticing how often they misuse those two words, awareness becomes a turning point. They start catching themselves mid-sentence, feeling a subtle discomfort that signals the old identity is losing its grip. Identity is the quiet architect behind every experience a person lives. Long before circumstances shift on the outside, something shifts on the inside. An assumption, an I am, a self-image forming in the background. Neville often said that identity creates reality, not the other way around. And when someone finally understands that the power of I am Neville Goddard described is the root of every manifestation, life stops feeling random. It becomes responsive. Picture someone who has struggled financially for years. They try new strategies, look for better jobs, watch motivational videos, yet nothing sticks. Then one day something subtle changes inside them. Instead of saying, I am trying to get better, they begin to feel, even slightly, I am meant for more. That tiny shift, barely noticeable, starts moving the law of assumption in a new direction. Life reorganizes around identity, not effort. Neville explained that the moment a person shifts who they are in consciousness, their 3D world begins catching up. Creation is finished explained this beautifully. The new version of self already exists. There's no waiting, no convincing, no negotiating. The identity is chosen, and reality aligns. This is why someone can change internally and suddenly see external synchronicities appear from nowhere. Think about someone who always saw themselves as unlucky in love. They walked into relationships already assuming abandonment. But one day they quietly begin to embody, I am valued. They don't shout it, they don't force it. They simply feel it real, Neville Goddard style, softly from within. And soon they notice their posture, decisions, and even the people they attract begin to shift effortlessly. Identity sets the stage. A person's reactions also reveal their identity. Someone who identifies as I am confident interprets challenges as opportunities. Someone who sees themselves as I am always overwhelmed interprets the same events as proof of burden. The imagination creates reality not only through scenes, but through the lens identity uses to filter life. A new identity means a new perception. And when this shift happens, it often feels like relief, like breathing out after holding tension for years. That's how someone knows they've entered the wish-fulfilled Neville method. The body relaxes into the new truth. The heart feels lighter. The mind accepts a new baseline. Identity is destiny because destiny is simply the consistent echoes of who someone believes they are. Consider someone who has always been the giver in their family, the one who rescues everyone, the one expected to sacrifice. That identity feels noble, but it also forms a prison. When they begin to explore I am supported, it feels foreign, even rebellious. Yet with persistence, the law of assumption identity shift begins to take root. Soon, people around them treat them differently without knowing why. Neville often said, you don't get what you want, you get what you are. This truth dissolves the illusion of chase. Instead of running after results, someone steps into a new internal identity and watches reality rearrange itself. When identity shifts, desires stop feeling distant. They begin to feel familiar, inevitable, natural, signs the power of I am Neville Goddard taught is activating. Resistance often appears when someone steps into a new identity. Old patterns echo, old feelings flare up, old beliefs try to regain control. But even this is evidence of transformation. It means the change has begun. Reality is adjusting, shedding the old response pattern. The internal shift has already happened. The external simply hasn't caught up yet. And eventually, a person realizes that identity is not decided by history, circumstance, or evidence. It's chosen, intentionally, consciously. Powerfully. And once someone sees that identity is destiny, they begin to choose their I ams with more care, more reverence, and more awareness, naturally preparing them for the next topic: how to practice this shift deliberately. A powerful identity shift doesn't require grand declarations or dramatic moments. It begins with something simple: choosing a new I am aligned with the life someone wants to live. Neville always emphasized that the power of I am, Neville Goddard taught, lies in its simplicity. When someone quietly says, "I am chosen," or "I am prosperous," or "I am healed," they're planting the seed of a new reality. Identity creates reality, Neville showed, and this is where that creation begins. Imagine a person sitting at the edge of their bed in the morning. Instead of scrolling through their phone or replaying yesterday's stress, they pause and whisper, "I am provided for." That tiny moment, repeated with sincerity, becomes a psychological anchor. It starts teaching the subconscious a new truth. The law of assumption identity shift begins not with effort, but with gentle repetition that feels natural. Neville never suggested forcing affirmations. He taught the wish-fulfilled Neville method, which means choosing an identity that feels believable enough to relax into. If someone declares, "I am a millionaire," but feels internal tension, they're pushing too far too fast. But "I am becoming financially stable," or "I am supported in unexpected ways," opens a doorway. The imagination creates reality, but it works best when the identity feels emotionally digestible. Think of identity like clothing. Some statements fit immediately, others need to be broken in. When someone says, "I am loved," at first it may feel awkward. But with repetition, it starts molding to them. Feeling it real, Neville Goddard explained, is what makes the fabric soft, familiar, and comfortable. Over time, the phrase stops feeling like a wish and becomes a recognition. People often underestimate how powerful simple declarations are. "I am calm," said during a stressful moment, creates a micro-shift. "I am capable," whispered before a challenge, stabilizes the mind. "I am enough," spoken after making a mistake, dissolves shame. These aren't empty words, they're identity corrections. Feeling is the secret behind them because emotion fuses the I am into the subconscious. Picture someone who always believed "I am overlooked." They decide to replace it with "I am chosen." At first it feels like pretending. Then one day they notice they speak differently in meetings. They hold eye contact longer. They walk into rooms with quieter confidence. They don't realize it, but they've practiced into embodiment. Creation is Finished explained this precisely. The identity already existed. Practice just made it familiar. A simple exercise can transform everything. Pick one identity that aligns with the desired life and repeat it gently throughout the day. No pressure, no urgency, just acknowledgement. I am becoming who I choose to be. This is the law of assumption in its most accessible form, identity chosen moment by moment. Someone might anchor their new identity through journaling. They write, "I am abundant," and describe a day in the life of that version of themselves. They might place reminders around their home, sticky notes, phone alarms, or a phrase on the bathroom mirror. They might meditate and breathe the I am into their body. The imagination creates reality, but it thrives on consistency. And as this declaration becomes familiar, something beautiful happens. The body begins to believe it. The nervous system relaxes, thoughts shift, emotional patterns soften. Feeling it real, Neville taught, becomes effortless. This is identity beginning to root, quietly changing how life is interpreted and experienced. Eventually, these simple declarations become a new emotional home, and from that home, the next topic naturally unfolds. Because identity doesn't just shift through words, it solidifies through feeling, and emotion is the bridge between the inner I am and the outer world. Feeling is the glue that fuses identity to reality. A person can repeat "I am prosperous" 100 times, but until the body softens into relief or gratitude, the declaration remains surface level. Neville always said that feeling it real is the engine behind manifestation, because the subconscious speaks emotion fluently. The power of "I am," Neville Goddard described, becomes active the moment it is felt, not merely spoken. Consider someone who has carried "I am struggling" for years. When they begin shifting toward "I am supported," the first signs of progress aren't external, they're emotional. Maybe they feel a small wave of relief, a loosening in the chest, or a moment of peace. Those sensations matter. Feeling is the secret, because emotion signals that the law of assumption identity shift has begun taking root. Think of emotion as the confirmation code of the subconscious. When someone feels the naturalness of their new identity, even for a second, the imagination creates reality, instantly begins responding. It doesn't wait for proof. It doesn't require logic. It only needs that subtle emotional acceptance that says, "This is who I am now." Identity creates reality. Neville emphasized because the subconscious cannot separate identity from feeling. Imagine a person practicing "I am chosen." At first, it's just a phrase. But then one day, as they repeat it softly, something warms inside them. Not a dramatic surge, just a quiet sense of belonging. That moment is more powerful than 1,000 empty affirmations. Feeling it real, Neville Goddard style, means embodying the state long before life reflects it. Emotion also reveals resistance. If someone says, "I am wealthy," and feels tension or disbelief, it's not failure, it's feedback. It shows the gap between their old identity and the new one. This is valuable information. It tells them to choose a softer "I am" for now, one the subconscious can accept, like "I am becoming financially strong." Creation is finished explained this elegantly. Every identity exists, but the bridge to it is paved with feeling. There's a beautiful shift that happens when someone begins feeling gratitude before seeing results. Gratitude isn't a reaction, it's identity. When someone feels grateful for abundance not yet visible, they're embodying the wish-fulfilled Neville method. They stop looking for signs and start living as the version of themselves who already has what they desire. Feelings also alter behavior without effort. A person who feels "I am secure" walks differently, speaks differently, and interprets situations differently. They no longer chase validation. They no longer panic at delays. Their emotional baseline becomes their new self-image, and the law of assumption begins reflecting it in external circumstances. Even small emotional victories count. A moment of confidence during a meeting, a sense of peace while paying bills, a spark of hope after years of doubt. These tiny experiences accumulate, strengthening the new identity. The imagination creates reality, but it does so one emotional tone at a time. Feeling is the secret, because emotion calibrates the identity the world responds to. Sometimes someone notices a shift without even trying. They wake up feeling lighter. They respond to stress with calm instead of fear. They find themselves expecting good news instead of preparing for disappointment. This is identity crystallizing. The power of I am Neville Goddard taught begins working on autopilot once the emotional baseline changes. And as feeling deepens, the new I am becomes more than a declaration. It becomes a home. But the journey isn't always smooth. There will be days when the old identity echoes loudly, competing for attention. That's when the next topic becomes crucial. What to do when 3D reality contradicts the identity you've chosen. When someone chooses a new identity, the old one doesn't disappear quietly. It echoes, it lingers, it tries to prove it still holds authority. Neville taught that this is not a sign of failure, it's a sign of transition. When 3D contradicts the new I am, most people panic and abandon their declaration, but this is the very moment when persistence matters most. The power of I am. Neville Goddard emphasized becomes dominant only when it outlasts the old pattern. Imagine someone declaring, I am prosperous, yet bills keep arriving, unexpected expenses pop up, or opportunities fall through. The temptation is to say, see, nothing is changing. But that reaction only reaffirms the old identity. Identity creates reality, Neville explained, and the old identity will keep echoing until the new one is stabilized emotionally. Feeling it real. Neville Goddard style means holding the new state even when the world tries to pull you back. Think of it like moving into a new home. For days, your mind still expects the old layout. You reach for light switches that aren't there, walk toward rooms that no longer exist. The body is adjusting to a new environment. The same happens with identity. The law of assumption identity shift has already occurred internally, but the outer world hasn't fully rearranged yet. The echoes are not obstacles, they're leftovers. Someone might practice, I am loved, and suddenly people from their past resurface, triggering old emotions. Or they affirm, I am chosen, and then experience rejection that stings even more sharply than before. This isn't the new identity failing. It's the last flare of the old one dissolving. Creation is finished explained this perfectly. The new reality is already selected, but the bridge of incidents must clear the remnants of the old. The secret is emotional loyalty, not to circumstances, but to identity. A person loyal to I am secure will interpret setbacks as temporary, not defining. They maintain inner stability regardless of outer noise. The imagination creates reality not when things look right, but when someone feels right in spite of appearances. This is maturity in Neville's teachings. Consider someone who declares, I am healed, yet symptoms persist. Their job is not to fight the 3D nor deny reality, but to refuse identity-level agreement with the symptoms. They can lovingly acknowledge what their body is experiencing while remaining loyal to I am whole. Feeling is the secret here, feeling the truth of healing even when the body is catching up. The biggest trap is using 3D as a scoreboard. Someone says, I am abundant, then anxiously checks their bank account to see if it's working yet. This only reinforces the state of lack. The law of assumption requires internal certainty first, external proof second. When someone learns to hold their I am without constantly measuring its progress, the shift speeds up dramatically. Resistance from the external world often shows up right before the breakthrough. Neville called this the last cry of the old state. Things may appear to get worse temporarily, not because the new identity isn't working, but because the old identity is collapsing. It's like a tree shaking loose its dead leaves before spring arrives. The shake is uncomfortable, but necessary. Persistence isn't about repeating affirmations endlessly. It's about refusing to return to the old self-image. Gert's choosing the new I am again and again, with soft confidence rather than force. Eventually, the external world yields, not because someone fought hard, but because identity always wins. And once the contradictions begin fading, the next topic emerges naturally. The early signs that the new identity is beginning to take command. There comes a moment, quiet, subtle, almost unnoticeable, when the new identity starts to take command. It's not announced with fireworks or dramatic breakthroughs. Instead, it shows up in tiny shifts, a different reaction, a new impulse, a surprising calm. These early signs reveal that the power of I am Neville Goddard taught is beginning to reorganize a person's inner and outer world. Identity creates reality, Neville explained, and these micro-changes are evidence of that. Imagine someone who always reacted defensively. Suddenly, during a conversation that would normally trigger them, they pause, breathe, and respond differently. They synchronicities. A person practicing I am prosperous begins meeting people who talk about opportunities. Books that relate to abundance cross their path, or they feel nudged to take actions they previously avoided. The imagination creates reality by moving them internally first. And once the inner state stabilizes, the outer world begins offering matching experiences. People around them may treat them differently without knowing why. Someone who adopts I am valued may suddenly receive more respect, compliments, or invitations. Someone shifting into I am chosen may notice people making more space for them, emotionally, physically, and energetically. The world responds to the identity long before the person consciously sees the shift. This is the wish-fulfilled Neville method, unfolding from the inside out. A strong early sign appears in the person's self-talk. The old inner critic becomes quieter, less convincing. The new identity feels more natural, like slipping into familiar shoes. Feeling it real, Neville Goddard taught, isn't a forced practice anymore. It becomes spontaneous. The person finds themselves thinking from the new identity rather than trying to think into it. Another subtle sign, new desires emerge. When someone shifts to I am capable, they suddenly feel inspired to start projects that once intimidated them. When they adopt I am abundant, they naturally seek better opportunities instead of settling. Creation is finished explained why this happens. The new identity already includes these desires, and the person is simply catching up. Behavior changes too. Someone who once avoided difficult conversations now communicates clearly. Someone who previously chased validation now feels grounded. Someone who lived in fear of rejection now walks with quiet assurance. These are not personality changes, they're identity expressions. Identity creates reality, Neville insisted, because it defines how someone moves through life. A beautiful sign is emotional recovery time. Someone who used to spiral for days now bounces back within hours or minutes. The new identity has begun regulating their emotional responses. Feeling is the secret because emotion reveals which identity is active. Faster recovery means the emotional center has shifted into higher alignment with the chosen I am. Sometimes, signs appear through contrast. The old identity's reactions feel heavier, unnatural, almost foreign. A person notices, this isn't me anymore, even if they momentarily fall into the old pattern. That awareness alone shows progress. The imagination creates reality through clarity, and clarity is often born from contrast. And perhaps the strongest sign of all, the new identity begins to feel like home, not something to practice, affirm, or chase, something remembered. Someone no longer says, I am becoming confident, but simply feels confident. This effortless embodiment is the foundation of the next topic, where the I am is no longer used to become anything, but to remember who someone already is. Deep embodiment is when the new identity stops feeling like an aspiration and starts feeling like the truth. At this stage, a person no longer uses I am to convince themselves. They use it to remember who they are. Neville often said that the power of I am Neville Goddard taught isn't about becoming anything. It's about awakening to a state that already exists. Identity creates reality, Neville emphasized, and once the identity is embodied, reality has no choice but to follow. Imagine someone who once repeated, "I am prosperous with effort," trying to soften years of scarcity. Over time, with feeling it real Neville Goddard style, the declaration becomes unnecessary. Not because they gave up, but because prosperity feels normal. It's no longer a wish, it's a baseline. This is the wish-fulfilled Neville method at its most profound. The person stops wanting the state and begins living from it effortlessly. Deep embodiment feels like breathing. Someone who has embodied I am loved doesn't wake up analyzing relationships. They simply exist from love. Someone who embodies I am chosen doesn't question their worth. They expect good treatment naturally. The law of assumption identity shift becomes automatic because the subconscious has fully accepted the new baseline. At this stage, emotional responses become the clearest indicator. Even when challenges arise, the old identity doesn't resurface as quickly. Instead of collapsing into fear, someone experiences grounded clarity. Feeling is the secret, because emotion proves the new identity is the default. Confidence doesn't need to be summoned, it shows up on its own. There's also an interesting change in how someone interprets events. What used to be seen as threats or setbacks now looks like stepping stones. A delay becomes divine timing. A challenge becomes an invitation. The imagination creates reality through meaning, and embodied identity assigns empowering meaning without effort. Reality feels less like a battlefield and more like a mirror. People around the individual respond to the shift, often without understanding why. They offer more respect, listen more attentively, or treat the person as someone of value. This isn't manipulation, it's resonance. Creation is finished explained that all states already exist, and when someone occupies a higher state, the world recognizes it. Embodiment influences the environment silently. Someone who has embodied a new identity also notices a change in their inner voice. The critic becomes softer, wiser, more grounded. The new voice feels familiar, as if it had been waiting beneath the surface all along. This is the imagination creates reality, polishing the self-concept until it shines. The person begins operating from an internal yes instead of an internal fight. Another mark of embodiment is effortless choice. A person who identifies as I am abundant no longer hesitates to invest in themselves, take aligned risks, or leave unfulfilling situations. Their decisions match their identity automatically. They no longer negotiate with their worth. Identity creates reality, Neville insisted, because identity dictates decisions, and decisions create momentum. Even silence changes. Someone may sit alone, in stillness, and feel aligned. No grasping, no forcing, no trying. Just a quiet recognition. This is who I am now. The need to repeat the I am fades because the identity has stabilized in consciousness. Feeling it real no longer feels like a practice, it feels like a memory. And as embodiment deepens, a person begins to sense that the power of I am is absolute, not symbolic. They start choosing their identity with reverence, awareness, and intention, preparing them for the final truth in the next topic, how reality bows to the identity they decide to claim. When someone finally understands the magnitude of I am, their entire relationship with reality changes. Neville taught that this phrase is not descriptive, it is creative. The power of I am. Neville Goddard revealed is absolute, decisive, and foundational. Identity creates reality, Neville emphasized, because reality has no authority of its own. It simply obeys. It reflects. It yields to the identity the individual chooses with conviction. Picture someone who adopts the identity, I am abundant. Not as a wish, not as a hope, but as a settled truth. They begin moving through the world differently. They stop chasing opportunities and start attracting them. The imagination creates reality because imagination shapes identity, and identity shapes circumstances. The wish-fulfilled Neville method becomes a living experience rather than a mental exercise. A person who chooses I am loved naturally gravitates toward healthier relationships. They no longer tolerate disrespect, neglect, or inconsistency, not because they force boundaries, but because the identity makes misalignment impossible. Feeling it real, Neville Goddard style, becomes effortless because love feels like home. The law of assumption identity shift has recalibrated their expectations, and their reality follows suit. Even challenges bend to identity. Someone who holds I am capable doesn't crumble when things go wrong. They rise, they adapt, they move forward. The circumstances don't determine their identity. Their identity determines how circumstances unfold. Feeling is the secret because the emotional tone of the chosen identity anchors the external outcome. Creation is finished, explained why this works. Every possible identity already exists in consciousness. A person isn't creating the identity, they're selecting it. Reality simply arranges itself around that selection. This is why Neville insisted that living in the end is the fastest path to manifestation. When someone chooses, I am the version of myself who already has this, the external world aligns with precision. Imagine someone adopting, I am prosperous. Suddenly they notice opportunities they previously overlooked. They stop sabotaging good things. Their decisions shift, their posture changes, and their energy feels different to others. They no longer ask, will this work out? They assume it. Identity has taken command, and reality is simply following its new instructions. People often say, I'll believe it when I see it. Neville flipped this completely. You'll see it when you believe it. And belief is identity. When someone declares, I am chosen, the world responds as if they were chosen. When they declare, I am healed, the world adjusts to their wholeness. The law of assumption operates without exception, mirroring the identity held most consistently. Over time, a person realizes that I am is not just a tool, it is sovereignty. It is authorship. It is the inner switch that determines which version of life they step into. The imagination creates reality, not because imagination is powerful, but because identity within imagination is powerful. The world doesn't shape them, they shape the world. And as they begin choosing their I am with intention rather than habit, a new sense of freedom emerges. They feel empowered, grounded, and clear. The question shifts from what can I get to who do I choose to be? And with that shift, the path ahead becomes wide open, ready for the identity that commands it. Now that you understand the true power behind I am, everything in your life becomes simpler. Not because challenges disappear, but because you finally know where the real transformation happens. It's not out there in circumstances. It's in here, in identity. Neville always taught that the world is a mirror, and now you've seen exactly how and why it reflects you with such precision. So the question becomes, who are you choosing to be from this moment on? Are you choosing, I am limited, or I am becoming. I am overlooked, or I am worthy. I am trying, or I am already the version of myself that has what I desire. Your I am is the doorway, and every time you say those two words, you step into a version of reality that responds accordingly. You don't need permission. You don't need proof. You don't need conditions to change first. You only need the courage to choose an identity aligned with the life you want, then let the world rearrange itself to match it. So take a deep breath, pick your I am, and walk into the version of yourself who already lives the life you've been imagining. If this message resonated with you, don't walk away without taking the next step in your transformation. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and stay close, because every new lesson will help you refine your identity, strengthen your assumptions, and build the reality that belongs to the best version of you.